Hello, I'm Aquatail, and... Hey, wait, this isn't Ram. Now, as I am sure you are all aware, at the current time of recording this video, Deltarune tomorrow is tomorrow, and by the time this video releases, Deltarune tomorrow will be today, which means this video is releasing on the last possible day to make a Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 theory. I, naturally, plan to capitalize on this time by presenting all of my Deltarune theories for the next 2 chapters. Of course, this won't be any normal theory video. Oh no, I have put all of my 100% soon-to-be proven correct theories onto a bingo card so I can gloat to everyone on the internet once I inevitably get a Deltarune theory bingo. Something that is both possible to achieve and normal to want. That being said, this video will obviously contain spoilers for Deltarune Chapters 1 and 2, including the Weird Route. If you don't know what a Snowgraves is, you might want to play Deltarune, which, honestly, if you haven't played Deltarune already, where have you been for the last 7 years? Wait, 7 years? Oh my god, that's like a third of my life. I realize now that it's kind of crazy that Chapter 1 released when I was in high school. Chapter 2 came out when I just started my freshman year in college, and now Chapters 3 and 4 are coming out right after I graduated. What next? The rest of the chapters come out after I'm dead? Hey, wait, that wasn't a theory! Anyways, without further ado, I present to you the Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 Theory Bingo! The point of this is to get my theories about Chapters 3 and 4 out before the release of the game, so I can rub it in everyone's faces when I'm right about literally everything. I'll go through each space across the board one by one, explaining each theory and my reasoning behind them. Most of these theories are rather simple, some related to gameplay, some to story or thematic elements, some are popular, ones you've probably seen over the internet, and some I have literally never seen anybody else suggest ever. They are all over the place, so I hope you enjoy them. Starting in the top left space, we'll start off with an easy-to-understand and rather popular theory. The Chapter 4 Dark World is located within the church. This theory is practically cheating because it's almost confirmed at this point, given all the recent teasers we've seen of the game. We know that the Holiday family will be there because Rudy mentions making it to Mass tomorrow, and it would stand to reason that Chris and Toriel would go as well, with Susie tagging along after Chapter 3. I also don't think that it is an accident that the church is inaccessible during Chapters 1 and 2 if it's a potential Dark World location, although that might just be that Toby Fox and the Deltarune team felt it was something unnecessary to spend development time on. That leaves the church as a prime candidate for a Dark World location after Chapter 3 takes place in the Dreamer household. The next space is Ralsei helps with Chris and Susie's project. Now this is a rather important theory. Ralsei has already chastised Chris and Susie for not getting started on their project yet, so it would make perfect sense for Ralsei to help them more directly. Additionally, I feel that doesn't really make sense for the project to keep getting mentioned unless it will become more relevant in the future, which is why I included it here. For the next space, I have Toriel is involved in the Chapter 3 Weird Route. This is a bit of an old theory that goes back to the early Chapter 2 days. When we just got Chapter 2 and were letting the Weird Route sink in, there was a lot of discussion concerning how the Weird Route would progress in future chapters. A popular theory for Chapter 3 was that Toriel would be involved, and that she could use some kind of fire magic in the Dark World to kill Darkness. While I personally do not think Toriel will become a playable party member, I think it would make sense for the Weird Route to involve her since she has such an important relationship with Chris, potentially making her more susceptible to manipulation. However, this theory would fall apart if the Weird Route exclusively relies on Noelle, in which case we might not get anything related to progressing the Weird Route at all in Chapter 3. My next theory is the Shadow Mantle doesn't help against the Chapter 3 secret boss at all. This is a simple theory I like to call Sham doesn't know what they are talking about. Either there is no way to obtain the Shadow Mantle prior to fighting the Chapter 3 secret boss, or the item genuinely doesn't have any benefit exclusive to the fight, such as having good defense against a specific elemental attack the boss uses, or making the boss more vulnerable. I don't think Sham is necessarily lying per se, rather they just think the party isn't strong enough to beat the secret boss without the Shadow Mantle, when that isn't true. And also I just think it would be funny for Sham to be wrong. My final theory for the top row is Caddy will be a temporary antagonist like Chapter 1 Susie. Now we are getting into some of the good stuff. Caddy doesn't have a ton of dialogue, so we don't know a whole lot about her yet, but she has made it clear to Chris that she doesn't like Susie and thinks she is a danger to Noelle. Introducing Caddy into the main story would be an interesting way to create a bit of narrative tension, particularly during a Dark World segment, and I will touch on that more later. Now onto the second row. Tenna is a good guy, while Mike is evil. So far, everything we have heard about these characters from official Deltarune material has been from Spampton. Spampton seems to have a negative opinion of Tenna and a more positive opinion of Mike, but frankly, I don't trust Spampton to be a reliable judge of character, so I'm going to assume that the opposite of true. My next theory is Noelle is not present in Chapter 3 at all. This is another simple theory. I doubt Noelle will show up during Chapter 3, since the only characters in Toriel's house at the time were, of course, Chris, Susie, and Toriel. This theory also considers the Weird Route and any Light World sections as well, so I don't think Noelle is going to show up outside of Chris's house, for example, after Chapter 3. Next we have... God damn it, Chris, where the hell are we? Come on, it's literally a perfect way to start Chapter 3, and it would be a funny reference to that meme from the early Chapter 2 days. It's not like Toby Fox hasn't referenced memes before. Next, the cell phone gets a legitimate use in the Dark World. And by a use, I mean one, of course, other than the current garbage noise that it makes. Perhaps some secret related to one of the chapter's eggs, or maybe Chris gets a call from Gaster during Chapter 4 or something. I don't know. It's some actual genuine use other than kind of just being an Easter egg. Next, I have Ultimate Heal gets stronger every chapter. For this theory, I specifically want to say that in every subsequent chapter, Susie's Ultimate Heal spell will be improved in some way, shape, or form, not including standard increases to Susie's magic stat. It can be a reduction in TP cost, better healing, some other effect, I don't know, I don't care, just as long as it improves in some way. Also, apparently, there was a clip posted to Blue Sky from the official Undertale Deltarune Blue Sky account that Susie's ultimate heal is changed to just heal in a later chapter. So this doesn't technically disprove this one yet. Let me have this, please. Now onto the middle row. I have Toriel hugs Ralsei, mistaking him for Azriel. Susie comments on Ralsei looking like Toriel, so Ralsei's similar appearance to Azriel is undeniably intentional. Assuming Toriel does enter the Dark World, an interaction between them would be nearly guaranteed, so I theorize that Toriel will initially mistake Ralsei for Azriel and give him a hug, having missed him and not seen him for so long. Maybe the Fun Gang even plays along for a little bit in order to convince Toriel the Dark World is just a dream or something like that. Either way, I think it would be just a very interesting moment and something I would like to see. I'm very confident about this theory, honestly. It would be such either a very touching moment or a very heartbreaking moment, depending on how it works. I can see it going either way. For my next theory, this one's a bit of a doozy, so strap in. The ability to swap party members is introduced in Chapter 4. So this is probably my biggest theory, because it comes in multiple parts. It doesn't seem so at first, but trust me, this theory actually has a lot of narrative and gameplay implications if it is true. Firstly, we've already seen from Chapter 2 that party members beyond just Chris, Susie, and Ralsei could be introduced because of Noelle, who is a playable party member with her own unique spells, stats, act options, etc. She is only playable during about a third of the chapter, but I find it unlikely that she would only be present in the Dark World during Chapter 2, especially considering her current importance to the Weird Route. With that in mind, it is reasonable to assume that more characters could become party members as well. Next, we already have a precedent for new major game mechanics being introduced in later chapters. Chapter 2 introduced the Recruit system, which gives actual gameplay functionality for sparing or fighting enemies. Chapter 2 also introduced the ability for party members other than Chris to act during the Sweet Captain Cakes fight, which is impossible to avoid on any route outside of glitches. Additionally, while not confirmed, I think it is rather likely that Chapter 3 will properly introduce the Elements mechanic. While Elements technically do already exist, as there are a handful of attacks, particularly some of Spamton Neos that are tied to specific elements that can have their damage reduced from using certain items. This functionality is never overtly stated in game. I believe the La Nino and El Nina fight will be where the elemental system is introduced, as weathermen that have elements tied to the weather just feels like a very obvious way of explaining the element system. So, to recap, we already have more than 3 possible party members in Deltarune, and the possibility of major game mechanics being introduced in later chapters is not off the table. Therefore, it is my opinion that in Chapter 4 we will have more than 3 party members, and gain the ability to swap between them and between each other, with the exception of probably Chris, because we, the player, directly control them and they give orders during battle. Noelle could finally join the party permanently, maybe Lancer or Burley as well, although they're probably a bit less likely. That also leaves room for other characters to become party members too, and personally, I think that Caddy is the most likely to join the party. She already has a relationship with Chris and Noelle, and she doesn't particularly like Susie. There is plenty of potential for interesting interactions between most of the current party members and Caddy. And of course, wherever Caddy goes, Jockington goes with her, so maybe they are a tag team pairing, or Jockington is just another party member. I don't know what Jockington could do narratively, but it's funny to imagine him, like, dunking on God in Chapter 7, so let's just go with it, okay? Anyways, some of my other theories are banking on Caddy and Jockington becoming party members, so I really need this one. Now, instead of having a free space, I wanted to put something here, so I decided to put that the music will go hard. Of course, it's pretty reasonable to theorize that Toby Fox, the renowned musician who made music for, Undertale, will continue to make bangers. Pretty simple theory, if you ask me. Chapter 3 focuses on Chris. This is another rather safe theory. So far, each chapter has primarily had a single character that the Dark World section of the game has focused on narratively. Chapter 1 focuses on Susie and her transformation from bully, outcast, and mean girl to friend, protector, and slightly less mean girl. Chapter 2 focuses on Noelle, where we learn much of her history, her relationship with other characters are developed, and the climax ultimately resolves by her choosing to stand up to Queen. This isn't to say that other characters like Chris or Valse aren't important, but there isn't as much focus on their growth throughout the main story. I think it is reasonable to say that Susie and Noelle are kind of like the main characters thematically of chapters 1 and 2 respectively, despite Chris being the game's overall protagonist. That being said, Chapter 3 would be the perfect opportunity to focus a little more on Chris. We know for certain that the Chapter 3 Dark World was created by Chris, and the Dark World will likely draw on details from their home, so them having a more thematic importance seems very reasonable. This next theory assumes that Caddy will become a playable party member, and I theorize that Caddy's magic will cost HP instead of TP. Currently, every party member uses the shared TP bar to cast spells, but I think an interesting gimmick for Caddy's spells is making her spells cost HP instead of TP. I think it would work well thematically given her interest in occult magic, if that makes sense. Next, okay, this one is a bit of a deep cut. Susie doesn't have an eating animation in the diner. So you know how, like, early on in Xenoblade Chronicles when Shulk takes, like, a bite out of a sandwich, but he doesn't actually bite into it? I'm talking about that. When Susie and Chris go to the diner, Susie will not have a dedicated animation for eating. Either the game fades to black when they start eating and all the food just magically disappears, or they literally don't eat anything. This is probably my most important theory on this list, and frankly, it's the one I'm most confident in. I'm gonna be watching that diner scene like a hawk. I'm on to you, Toby Fox. Next, the Chapter 3 secret boss is in Toriel's room. Toriel's room is inaccessible during Chapters 1 and 2, so we have no idea what's in there. That, in my opinion, makes it the perfect place to house the object that will become Chapter 3's secret boss, because whatever the secret boss is, it would be surprising, because we don't know what it could be. This, of course, assumes that Chapter 3's Dark World won't be just related to the TV and television shows, but rather the entire Dreamer household, which isn't a given. Jockington has the highest max HP stat out of all party members. Assuming Jockington becomes a party member, this would be really funny. That's kind of all there is to it. He should have more HP than everyone else because it would be funny. Moving on. Chapter 3 anime section. There's a TV. Anime is watched on TV. It's gonna happen. You all are gonna be surprised when it happens, but not me. I'm predicting it, okay? And it's super obvious that it would happen. So be prepared for the anime section, the super cringy anime section in Chapter 3. It's gonna happen! Asgore enters the Chapter 3 Dark World. If Asgore finds out about Toriel calling the police because of her tires being slashed, it's very likely that he would be concerned for her and Chris's safety. Additionally, because Chris left the front door open before creating the Dark World, Asgore would easily be able to enter. This would be an easy way to force Asgore and Toriel to interact, as well as getting more information about the Dreamer family's history. It would be a very dramatic scene, having them interact again, and I think it would be a very valuable inclusion in the game. On to the final row of theories. 1. The Knight's identity is not revealed. This theory, of course, assumes that Chris is not the Knight, otherwise the ending of Chapter 2 revealed the Knight's identity, but frankly, if that was the purpose of that scene, then it did an awful job of it, because I still don't think Chris is the Knight. Originally, when the first paid release of Deltarune was going to be Chapters 3 through 5, I felt it would make the most sense for the Knight's identity to be revealed in Chapter 4, then in Chapter 5 we would battle them in some major event. Perhaps the Roaring would leave that chapter with a cliffhanger ending. However, now that we are only getting Chapters 3 and 4, I think it makes more sense to leave the Knight's identity unknown. That way, the mystery is left for us players to wonder about until the next chapter. I do think we'll get more clues as to who the Knight is, but I don't think we'll have explicit confirmation as to what their identity is. I do think we'll be able to make more accurate guesses after Chapter 4. Currently, it's more like throwing darts at a dartboard with a blindfold on. Toriel thinks the Dark World was just a dream. After characters have exited the Dark World, they have consistently wondered if it was just a dream. This theory states Toriel will follow this trend. Pretty simple stuff. Honestly, I think she will probably explicitly say, oh, it must have been a dream or something like that. Next, Ralsei learns a damaging spell. If Noelle permanently joins the party, she will wind up having an honestly objectively better spell list than Ralsei. They both have Heal Prayer. Sleep Mist is more action efficient than Pacify against all but one enemy, and Noelle has a damaging spell while Ralsei does not. Ralsei learning the damaging spell would be a way to even the playing field a bit, so Noelle doesn't just kind of power creep him, but can also just coincide with an important character building moment for him. Perhaps he needs to defend an ally, but doesn't have any offensive magic to help with that. Next, Jockington Heroic Sacrifice. Don't worry, he's fine. Alright, hear me out. Imagine this. The fun gang is in trouble. They're trying to escape from, I don't know, whatever the bad guy, the king or queen equivalent of Chapter 4 is or something. The only way to escape is to cross a gap, like a bridge that's been destroyed or something, I don't know. Jockington, the hero we need but don't deserve, volunteers to be the bridge for everyone else because, you know, he's long and stuff, like a snake. But he tragically falls and everyone mourns him and is really sad. Caddy is in tears and Ralsei cries because of Jockington's heroic sacrifice. Then in the next room, he's back in the party and totally fine. Can you tell I'm running out of things to put down here? Next! Final theory on this board, Chapter 4's story focuses on Ralsei. Similar to my theory that Chapter 3 focuses on Chris, Ralsei is overdue for a chapter focusing on his development. There's a lot of baggage that Ralsei has that could be addressed at pretty much any time, like his feelings of self-worth and things like that, so this just feels like a reasonable place to have that if it won't be in a later chapter. And with that, I hope you all enjoyed my Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 Theory Bingo card, where I have shown you all of my theories that are definitely 100% going to be correct. Now, time to not sleep for the next 2 days so I get the authentic Deltarune experience of being sleep deprived while experiencing the new chapters for the first time. With that, goodbye.